Hello and welcome to another Minnie and Me painting session offered by Garden City Arts. My name is Miss Katie and I'm going to walk you through this Thanksgiving inspired painting that we have for you for November. Now, just in case you purchase the kit, make sure you go ahead and open up the kit that you can purchase from Garden City Arts and lay out your paint in the number 1 through 7 on your foam plate. All of your colors are already pre-mixed and ready to go. If you did not buy the kit, no worries, you can still do this painting. These are the colors we're using, so go ahead and grab what you see here and then you'll be ready to paint. You'll also need to have your chalk handy because we're going to draw out these birds in just a moment. You'll need to have a paint cup for water and paper towel and all that good stuff. Now, before we get into the actual painting, let's talk really quickly about some painting techniques, okay? So I'm going to show you a few basic tips and tricks that will help you as we progress in the painting. First, you always want to dip your paintbrush in paint water and pat it dry. This is called priming your brush, and it makes it nice and damp and cool to the touch, but not dripping wet. Next, let's talk really quickly about how to erase paint. So, we've all made mistakes, right? It happens. When that happens, and you have paint in a place you don't want it, swirl, tap, and dry your brush, or grab a clean one and just dab it in paint water and get it damp. And then you can take and move your brush back and forth. And do you see how that's picking up the paint? That will take any mistakes that are still wet right off your canvas. Now you have to work fast. If your paint dries, then you can't do anything to erase it. But remember, paint covers paint. So no matter what today, it's okay. You can always fix a mistake if you make one. Next, let's talk about line work. I'm going to paint on the back of my canvas really fast, and I'm going to show you something. So when you use the top edge of your brush, the top, so it's perpendicular to your canvas, you can make a really nice line. Now this is on unprimed canvas, so it doesn't look like a great line, but on the right side of your canvas, it'll look a lot nicer. When you need to fill in an area, you use the side of your brush or the edge, and you can paint and fill it in. Do you see that? Okay, now we've gone over those basics. Let's talk really fast about how I'm going to teach you during this video. So I'm going to show you a step that we're on, and then I'm going to put up on the screen the finished product, the turkey painting that you saw at the beginning, and then the step that we're on the right hand side. And that screen will be on for about 4 seconds. You can pause the video and catch up, make your painting look as close to the step that we're on as possible, and then you will be ready to push play on the video and move forward. So let's go ahead and get started now that we've covered all of the basics. We're going to jump right into step number 1. We have to draw out our turkey before we can start painting. Now you are going to use the orange chalk that you have in your kit to draw your lines on your canvas. That's really hard to see on camera, so instead I'm going to draw and show you how to draw our turkeys on a white piece of paper with a Sharpie. Okay, I'm only doing this so that you can see what's going on. So again, you're going to use your orange chalk in your canvas, and I'm going to show you how to draw on a white piece of paper with Sharpie. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we need to do is divide our canvas in half, okay? So find the halfway point, and then you kind of karate chop it in half. Now, you want this first little dot that we're going to make to be below the halfway point. I'm going to put mine about an inch down underneath the halfway point. So there's my little point, okay? We're starting with the point. It's in the center of the canvas from left to right, but it's down below the halfway point from top to bottom. Now, I am going to make a V, and the V is going to be centered on top of that point, okay? Okay, so I have my V. It's a small V because this is the start of our turkey's beak. Now, on top of this V, I'm going to put a nice curvy line. Now it kind of looks like an ice cream cone, right? So that is the beak of our turkey. Now I'm going to add another curvy line. I'm going to start on either side, right where the ends of my V left off or ended. And I'm going to make a bigger, curvier line for the head of the turkey. So I'm going to start here and go nice and big and curve back around. There's my turkey's head. Now, when you make a mistake with chalk, you can erase it. You take a clean, damp brush and just move your brush back and forth and it disappears. I'm drawing with Sharpie. I can't erase, but you can see it better. So we have our turkey's head. Now we're going to come underneath our turkey and we're going to create what looks kind of like a vase. It's a very thin neck and then it comes out and gets really big and ends at the bottom of our canvas. So I'm going to start right underneath my beak. I'm going to put a little point here, a dot here. That's where I'm going to start my neck. And it's going to come down a straight line, vertical line, and then it's going to all of a sudden just get up and get really big and go outwards. Do you see that? So come straight down and then all of a sudden, whoop! Oh, you know, my turkey's a little off, but that's okay. Again, that's why, like if you had done that, you could erase it, fix it up. My turkey's just going to look a little weird. That's okay. It's just my drawing. Okay, so we have our turkey. Now, our turkey needs accessories. We're going to come up to the top of the turkey's head and we're going to put these little bowls. Do you see little bowl lines right where you'd think the turkey ear might be? Okay, right above it. And then we're going to do a curved hill all the way across, connecting those two curved lines together. That is going to be the brim of our turkey's hat. Now, we're going to put a nice top hat, which has nice tall sides on our turkey. You can have it straight or you could have it a bit off to the side as if our turkey is kind of looking to the side or has his head like slightly slanted. I'm going to do it straight this time. So I'm going to do two straight vertical lines coming off of the brim of his hat, and then I'm going to do a hill, a very slight hill, just a little bit of a curve connecting those two straight lines. All right, we have the start of our turkey. Now guess what? This turkey is not a turkey unless he has feathers. So I'm going to put a little dot on either side of his body, and that's going to be the start of my blue tail feathers. I'm going to do a nice big round kind of scallop pattern, okay, or curved line, and then I'm going to do another curved line and have it end. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So two little curved lines for the feathers. So that's one set of feathers, but turkeys have really, really big tail feathers. So I'm going to come down here and do another set of points, and that's where my next row of feathers come. And this time I'm going to go really big, do a huge curvy line, and then do another one that goes right behind him. Okay, so our tail feathers go behind our turkey. I want to try to make it look symmetrical, which means if I drew a line right down the middle, this side would look exactly the same as this side if we mirrored it. Okay, so I'm going to go straight up with a diagonal line, do a curve, and then end right behind the turkey's head. The last row of tail feathers is really easy. This is all tail feather. We don't have to draw this part down here. We just have to draw up here where they end. So you just do little scallops right behind your turkey's head, going off of the canvas, okay? Now, that's really all we need to do for our turkey for now. So, let's go ahead and move on to step number 2. Okay, so I drew my turkey on my canvas earlier, and remember, you did that in chalk with your orange chalk, while I was doing it in Sharpie. So we should have a very nice turkey all laid out on our canvas and ready to go. We're finally ready to start painting. We're going to grab color number 1, which is kind of this very dark red or burgundy color, and we're going to grab our smallest shader brush, okay? This guy is a number 6, and he is the perfect size for getting into little tiny nooks and crannies. Now we're going to start with the back of our turkey. We're gonna paint the back tail feathers, then we'll do the middle tail feathers, and then we'll do the tail feathers that are closest to our turkey. So the first thing I'm going to use is the top edge of my brush, and I'm going to outline using the top edge. Do you see that? Now I can switch my brush up to make a thin line. It will make either a thin line if you have it turned to its thinnest point, or a thick line, depending on how you have the brush. Either way is just fine, but I like thin. Okay, I'm outlining. I am going to avoid my actual turkey. So the top hat stays empty for now. The other tail feathers stay empty, and the bird's body stays empty. So we're just outlining that outer set of tail feathers. Now that I have it outlined, I'm going to fill it in with red paint. Okay, so let's pretend like I am super speedy and I just painted all of that in super fast. I would be ready to swirl, tap, and dry my brush and move on to the next color. Guess what? We're doing all of the tail feathers on step number 1. So we're going to move on to step number 2, and we're going to put orange in the middle of our turkey's tail feathers. Do you see how I'm outlining? I can outline right up to where my red meets. Now this orange is going to be a little see-through, and that's okay. We have yellow as our background for our canvas, so it will not make it look bad at all, okay? Now you can also kind of do this little brushing up so that it looks more like feathers, okay? And you're gonna fill in all of the turkey's tail feathers in the middle with the orange paint. So you watched me outline the red tail feathers. Oop, and look at my paint. It's dry and scratchy. I'm going to mix a little bit of water into it, and that will help make it less dry and scratchy. To do that, I dip my paintbrush in water, take a little hunk of paint, and mix it on my palette. Okay, so I know that everything in between the first set of tail feathers and the last set of tail feathers is going to be orange, right? I'm going to pretend like I speed painted and just fill that in super fast. Don't worry, you don't need to speed paint. We'll pause the video in just a second. I just want to show you all of the steps so you'll be good to go. So then I would swirl, tap, and dry my brush and go to the last color for my tail feathers, which is number 3, and that is this nice bright aqua green. That's what it's called. Really, it's a turquoise, but its true name is bright aqua green. Now I would outline everything first using the top edge of my brush, and then when I'm ready to fill in, remember you use more of the side of your brush, and that helps fill in the space very quickly. Okay, so I'm going to outline everything in blue and then fill in. So our tail feather should be red, that dark red, orange, and blue. And it should be the same on both sides. Do you see that? Now, I'm going to do something really fast. Oh, I'm not doing the greatest job painting in my tail feathers. I'm going to do one more thing really fast and then pause the video so that you can catch up and so that I can catch up and finish painting in my turkey. I am going to paint his beak, and I'm going to use a different color for that, color number 4, which is kind of this goldish yellow color. Okay, the goldish yellow, I'm going to fill in that first little ice cream cone. Now, this goldish yellow is going to be very light, but that's okay because again, we're painting on a yellow canvas, so it will be just fine. And try not to get any blue in there, but if you do, it happens, no worries. And I'm just going to fill it in solid. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video here in a second, but before I do, let's review. We're going to have a layer of red, a layer of orange, and a layer of blue. And we're going to have a yellow beak. Remember, you're going to outline using the top edge of your brush, and then you're filling in using the side of your brush, okay? Just like that. side of the brush fills in very fast. We're using our shader brush, and if you need to, you could do 2 layers of paint on this if you feel like it would look a little bit nicer. So you do a layer everywhere, let it dry for just a second, and then come back on and put another layer, okay? It's up to you. I'm gonna pause the video and then we'll move on to the next step of our bird. All right, if you have tail feathers and a beak on your turkey, you are ready to move on. We're gonna move on to step number, or color number 5. And this is a brown. It's actually burnt sienna. Now, it's just more of the same, more filling in, okay? So we're gonna fill in our turkey and we're going to outline his head and his body, okay? So head, body. And remember, you use the top edge of your brush to make a nice clean line and go right up to those feathers. You don't want to have any yellow showing through. Now, sometimes you can get into kind of tricky areas. If you need to use a round brush, you can. What you can do is take that round brush and use that little point and get right in between the feathers and the beak of your turkey. Do you see that? That way you can get up in between. Make sure there's not any yellow showing through. And you might even need to use it up here a little bit. So we're going to very quickly color in his body, go right up to the edge of those tail feathers, and his head. Then we're gonna fill it in solid with this nice brown paint so that our turkey will now be complete except for his hat, which we'll worry about in the next step. Okay, go ahead and get painting. All right, we have our turkey filled in, both his head and his body. Now, there's just one more thing that we need to do, and then we're done filling things in. And then we can start doing the fun part, which is the details. So I'm gonna grab my black. It's the number 6 on my paint set. We're all the way to number 6. We're just going through this painting fast, huh? And I'm going to make sure my brush is nice and clean and dry-ish. It should be damp. Okay, and I'm going to grab my black paint and I'm gonna do exactly what we've been doing for the last few steps. I'm outlining first. Oof, this poor outline doesn't look as good, and that's okay. Sometimes it doesn't look exactly like you wanted it to, but I think it looks more interesting when you have a few little tiny mistakes, or what you think are mistakes. They aren't always mistakes. Okay, so I'm outlining first. I'm outlining all sides of my hat and making sure I don't cover up anything that we've painted so far, but I am going right up to the line. Okay, go right up to the line. Don't go too far into it. And then fill it in with black paint. Just fill the whole thing in solid. Okay, once you have your top hat filled in, we can move on. I'll put up the end screen. You can pause, and then we'll move on in just a moment. And we'll finally get to do the details on our turkey. Okay, at this point, your turkey, at least the turkey itself and the hat, are probably going to be very wet. The tail feathers might be dry and the beak might be dry, but that's probably about it. We're going to open up color number 7, our last color, which is white. And we're gonna start adding some details to the feathers and to the beak. Everything else we need to let dry, okay? So we'll just be patient and wait a little bit. If you need to take a break, now's a good time. You can go find your pet and give them a belly scratch, or you could go find a drink, okay? Maybe grab some water, stretch. We've been painting and doing such a good job. It's important to take breaks if you need to, and your painting will be dry by the time you get back. So we're gonna take our round brush. It's the one that has kind of a point on it. We're gonna take just a little bit of white paint. If you need to, mix a little bit of water into that white paint so it's not so dry and scratchy. Paint is dry and scratchy when you don't mix water into it, okay? And then we're going to focus on the tail feathers and the beak. So I'm going to start with the tail feathers. I'm going to add a little line right along the tail feather on the inside, and it follows the shape of the tail feather. Do you see how it's nice and curvy? Now, if you want to, you could even put in some little thin lines that go straight up and down that kind of all point towards the turkey. That would be kind of fun. You don't have to, and I didn't do that on my original, but if you are wanting to add more detail, that is a nice, easy way to do so. So I have added my white line to my blue tail feathers, and now I'm going to go in. I'm not going to add these to all of them, but I am going to add my white line to all of them. Remember, if your paint is dry and scratchy, dip your paintbrush in water, mix the water into your paint, and then look at that. It just moves on your canvas so much easier. It doesn't look dry and scratchy. Okay, so I'm going to just do a quick outline on all my tail feathers, and then I'm going to show you what we're going to do to the beak. Let me just finish up real fast. I need more water in my paint. It's dry and scratchy. There we go. And one more row of tail feathers. Gonna do it to the outside edge. Really don't have to do it down here, do we? And you know what? I lied. I'm going to put those little lines on the inside of the tail feathers too. I think it looks kind of cool. I wish I had done it on my original one. Okay. You can even make your own colors. You can mix a lighter version of orange or a lighter version of blue to do this detail. All you'd have to do is take like a little bit of blue paint on your brush, put it on your palette, a little bit of white, and look, white makes tints of colors. Tint, when I say tint, I mean a lighter version of the color. Look at that, the teacher made a mistake. All I have to do though is take a clean damp brush and wipe it right off. And look, if we put that light blue in there, that looks really nice too. You could do that with all of those colors and add just some more details. That'd be really cool, huh? This is your painting. You get to do anything you want to do with it, okay? Keep that in mind. Now let's turn our attention to that beak for a moment. I'm going to add a highlight to my beak. I'm going to add the white paint to the top of the beak, and then I'm going to do a little zigzag squiggly line going all the way down to the bottom of it. Now, if you go too crazy with your white and you don't like how much white there is, mine has a lot of white, what you can do is you can go back to that yellow color and mix some of that in to your paint or cover up some of the white. Okay, and there you go. Okay, we're ready to move on. I'm going to put up the pause screen. If you want to do the details to the feathers, you can. Remember, you just mix white into the original color. So white into the red, white into the orange, and white into the blue. And you will have a lighter version of each color. Okay, let's take a quick break, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, for this next step, we're going to do two things. We're gonna do something to the background. I'll show you lots of different options. And then we're gonna put a ribbon on the top part of his hat to separate the top part of the hat from the brim, okay? Now, make sure your hat is dry before you do that step. That's why we're gonna do the background first. Maybe give it some extra time. So I can do lots of different things. In my original, I took an orange color and I used a really big brush, and I put a whole bunch of water into my orange paint. It's called a glaze when you do that. And I started at the top and I brought it down to make it look a little bit darker in the corners. That's called a vignette, when you make the edges dark and the center a little bit lighter, or keep it a little bit lighter. The reason we do vignettes, and do you see how I'm just making it darker? And I had to use a lot of water in my paint. And you go back and forth with your biggest brush that you have to kind of blend everything. But the reason we do vignettes is so that we focus not on the edges of our painting, but on the focal point or the hero of our painting, which is our pilgrim turkey. So you could do that, or you could pick your favorite color that we've used so far and do a pattern in the background, okay? For instance, I'm gonna take my blue. I love this turquoisey color. Remember, it was called bright aqua green. And I'm going to do little dots in the background. It's gonna be a polka dotted background. Okay, so whatever you decide to do, go ahead and start working on your background. Remember, you can do shapes, you could do stripes. I mean, really, the possibilities are endless. It's up to you what you decide to do. So I'm going to worry about the background more later, but before we can move on to the next step, we have to do part 2. Do you remember part 2? I said we were going to do the brim of the hat, or work on making a brim for our hat, separating the brim. Okay, I'm just going to quickly put in a few more blue dots. Polka dots are my favorite. And then background is done. Okay, so that brim of that hat, you could use a round brush or you could use a shader brush. You're going to jump back to our white color, and you are going to start by outlining. Do you remember that original curvy line that we drew? I'm going to show you really fast. Do you remember how we put in this really thin curvy line? It looks kind of like a noodle. And then we put the top hat on. Well, we are going to make the band of our hat right here. So we're going to have a band here, and then we're going to have this little triangle right here, or I'm sorry, rectangle, oh boy, because that's going to be the buckle for our hat, okay? So we're gonna have a buckle, and then we're gonna have a ribbon through the buckle. So I'm going to put on that band of white first. Now remember, your white paint is probably going to feel a little dry, and if it looks scratchy, what you do is you add water to it, okay? Now the first layer might look a little gray. Mine does. That's okay. We can have a gray band, or we can let it dry and do a second coat. Now, even though we're not going to do the buckle yet, I'm going to put in where I know the buckle is going to be, right there. That way, when we put the yellow in, it'll be nice and bright and easier to see. Now, my paint is still dry, so I'm going to have to let it dry for a little bit, and then I can put a second layer. Go ahead and work at your own pace and get your buckle and ribbon on your hat, and then I'm going to pause the video and we'll move on once you have everything, the background and everything else, and it's nice and dry. Okay? All right, guess what? We're on the very last step. So we're just doing a few more little details. We need to add a collar to our turkey to make him look more pilgrimy, and we also need to add the eyes. So I'm going to show you how to draw those really fast on our white piece of paper. So for the collar, we're going to draw a curvy line right below his neck, okay? Then we're going to come down a little bit lower on his body, or her body. Could be a female pilgrim. And we're going to do a little scallop going all the way across, okay? That's going to be the collar, and we're going to paint that guy in white. It might take a few layers. That's okay. Next, let's talk about the eyes. Oh, the eyes are fun, and you can do so many different things, okay? So I'm going to show you really fast. You can do just curved lines. And what does that look like? Does it look like the turkey's sleeping? He's had a rough night. You could do, this is going to look a little weird, but you could do hills on top and make it round, and then he would have round eyes. Or you can do what I originally did, which is have a straight line at the bottom, and then you do a big, huge hill, kind of looks like a gumdrop on top of all that, and you fill it in, except for a little teeny tiny part, black, and you have a cute little eyeball. Okay. You could do so many different things to give this turkey some expression, and it's up to you what you want to do for your turkey, okay? Now, let's turn our attention back to our canvases, and let's really quickly put in the collar. I'm going to use my round brush, and I'm going to use white paint. I'm going to start with that curved line for the collar, and then I'm going to come down low and do a scallop pattern. And then I'm going to fill in everything. But first, remember, go along the turkey's body and outline. And then I'm going to use my shader brush because it goes a little bit faster. And I'm going to fill in this white collar for this turkey. So all the way across, fill it in. I'm painting super fast. You take your time, okay? And we will have a cute little collar for our turkey. Remember, if you need to, you can do a second layer of white paint. You have to let the first layer dry first. You could also kind of come in there with some different colors, maybe an orange or the yellow, and you could add some details to your pilgrim's collar. Okay? You don't have to have this turkey look boring. Okay. So there's my collar. Now, let's turn our attention to the eyes. I'm going to do a curved line to show you what that looks like when the turkey is happy. So when you do hills instead of bowls, look at how happy that turkey is. He just looks so happy, doesn't he? He looks like he is about ready to eat a nice Thanksgiving meal. Now, I'm going to fill my eyes in so that I can talk to you about reflection lights in case you want to. But remember, you don't have to do a big, huge eye. You could do a sleepy turkey. He has eaten a lot of food. Or you could do a happy turkey. And remember, it's either bowl or hill. You could also practice in chalk before you actually do the eyes. That way your eyes don't look like mine and aren't off. My eyes are a little off. Uh-oh. My eyes, one's bigger than the other. Okay, so I have my black paint for my turkey's eyes. Then I take on my round brush, white paint, and I kind of just stamp it on for the reflection light. And voila, we have some turkey eyes. Now, there's one last thing that we need to do, and it's the hat. So we will want to take some white paint, and we will want to do another layer to make the ribbon, the white ribbon on the hat, look a little bit brighter. If you like that gray, that's okay. You can do that. You can keep it that way. I'm going to flip my little turkey upside down so that I can reach the ribbon a little bit better. And then the very last thing we're gonna do is take some of that yellow, kind of that goldy yellow that we used for the beak, and we're gonna paint on the buckle just really fast. The buckle just looks like kind of half of a rectangle, okay? Or maybe a table. There's the top of the table, and then there's the legs. And there we go. We have our Thanksgiving turkey. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. I hope you had fun painting this turkey. And I hope you were creative and added maybe some fun little details on his feathers or gave him a really cool collar, okay? Have a good rest of your day, and I hope to see you again very soon. Thank you for watching this Garden City Arts program. Please help us thank our generous sponsors.